This lesson, we're going to bring our sprites into our Unity scene. Alright, so let's get started with replacing our old sprites with the prototyping with our actual final assets. Now before we do that, let's select our Texture Atlas 01 and let's change the format from true color to compressed because we want to lower this file size. 64 megabytes for a sprite sheet is a little too much. So we're going to compress that. Okay, using all of the same settings, just changing that to compressed. Give it just a moment to finish up, and you'll see just how drastically it changes that file size. So going from 64 megabytes down to 16. Now we're not going to see much of a difference between the true color and the compressed. In fact, the player won't even really notice. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and compress this one as well. That's going to go down to 8 megabytes. And now we're ready to get started. So in order to bring in sprites from your Texture Atlas, you need to make sure that you go to your 2D view in your scene, and you want to expand the Texture Atlas 01, and then you can start to select the sprites and bring those into your scene. Now looking at this midground main really quickly before you get confused, this looks like it's really pixelated, and it's just the preview. I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Okay, so sometimes the preview doesn't look that great. Go ahead and drag and drop that into your 2D scene, and you'll see that it comes in and it looks really, really nice, just like the Photoshop document. So let's go ahead and position this, and I'm going to change my Y value to 0, and let's do position on this. Let's go ahead and set it to 10. Okay, something like that. Now you'll notice that our final assets are a lot bigger than our prototype, and that's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. Let's go ahead and bring in the cliff side. Okay, so we're going to drag and drop that here. Notice that I don't have to do any resizing because I've already done that in the Photoshop document. So I can just place it and we can get started with creating the rest of our game. So those are the two elements that I want to work with right now. We can go ahead and bring in things like the clouds if we wanted to, but I'm not quite ready for those, so we don't need to get into all of that. However, I do want to bring in the sky. So let's go ahead and bring the sky in. We're going to set that as a background. Now notice that this one is much smaller, okay, than everything else. It doesn't appear to be the correct size. So what we can do is we can actually scale it, and it's not going to really tear anything up if we go to 2 by 2 on that. Okay, and then we're going to switch out of our 2D view, and what I'll do is I'll just drop that back in the Z direction, and let's draw that back to something like 32. Okay, in the Z. So if I go to my 2D view here, we've got that sky. Now we're not going to be able to see all of that. Okay, we're just, as the player, we're only going to be seeing this much. So let's come in and let's start getting rid of these assets that we had before in our prototype. So they've served their purpose. Now what we want to do is we just want to go ahead and get rid of all of those and start fresh. So let's delete that. Let's get all of these other pieces out. Okay, including that background there. Let's make sure that we don't have anything else. We have these foreground elements, which we can go ahead and get rid of as well. And we'll delete those. Now we have our boss game object. And if we go to our 2D view, you can see that he is not in the correct place based on our level, and he's not even the right size, but that's okay. We're just going to put him in a temporary position right now, and then we can also take these cliff triggers and we can put those in their respective positions. Okay, and we have this kill box, which we're going to go ahead and move down here, so whenever the player hits that after they've jumped off the cliff there. We can also adjust that scale on the box collider, so we'll do something like 16. So that way, whenever they hit that, the player will die and then respawn. We also have our checkpoint. Let's go ahead and put that into the correct position, which is right about here. And then we have our character. Now the character, we're going to keep this game object, but we're going to replace the graphics. Okay, same thing with the boss. But the character, we're going to start him right here, just for right now. Okay, eventually we'll spawn him inside of here. So let's grab that spawn point and put it right in here inside of that tree. Alright, so now if you happen to hit play, your character is going to fall and we're going to go below our level. You can see all the scripts are still working on all the game objects that we have left in the scene. So now what we want to do is we want to get our character working. But before we can get that character working, we need to take care of that collider that is going to allow the player to move along our 2D object. Now we could go ahead and use primitives like we did in the prototyping course, but that's not going to give us the exact look that we want. So what we'll do is we'll bring in a custom collider that we've built in something like Maya, and we'll bring that in. And